The morning sun rose over New Seoul Colony, casting long shadows across the metal buildings and farming domes. It was supposed to be a peaceful day on the outer rim planet of Kepler-4 for 2b. The human settlement had been growing for 3 years. Now, with families building new lives far from Earth, Jinho woke up early, as always. At 16, he was one of the older kids in the colony. His parents trusted him to look after his younger sister Mireille while they worked in the mining operations. He stretched and looked out the window of their small apartment. Everything seemed normal. Too normal. In the kitchen, Mireille was already eating breakfast. She was 14 but acted much older. Her dark eyes were always watching, always thinking. She looked up when Jinho entered. "Did you hear that sound last night?" she asked, stirring her cereal. "What sound?" "Like thunder, but there were no clouds." Jinho shrugged. "Probably just the mining equipment. Dad said they were testing new drilling machines." But Mireille frowned. She had good instincts about things. Their parents had always said so. Across the colony, other children were starting their day. Daeho was in his room, fingers flying across his computer keyboard. At 15, he was the colony's unofficial tech expert. He could fix anything electronic and had even improved some of the colony's communication systems. This morning, he was trying to boost the signal strength of their internet connection. Soyang was already outside, running laps around the colony perimeter. The 13-year-old was faster and stronger than most adults. She trained every morning, dreaming of competing in the Galactic Athletics Championships when she was older. Her breath came out in small puffs in the cool morning air. Kung Min was helping his parents prepare breakfast for the colony's communal dining hall. At 16, he was known for bringing people together and solving problems. When the adults had disagreements, they often asked for his opinion. He had a way of seeing solutions that others missed. The younger children were getting ready for school. Hyunwoo, 12 years old, was practicing his scouting skills by trying to spot birds through his bedroom window. Yuna, 11, was reading the colony's daily news bulletin and making notes about interesting stories. Minho, only 10, was taking apart an old radio to see how it worked. In the school building, Yoonji was reviewing her medical textbooks. At 14, she already knew more about first aid than many adults. Taeyeon, 13, was studying survival techniques from Earth's military training manuals. Ga, 12, was quietly observing the other children, as she always did. Even little Wanbin, just 9 years old, was thinking about the colony's supply problems and how they might be solved. None of them knew that high above their planet, alien ships were watching. Commander Thek stood on the bridge of his warship, looking down at the human settlement through advanced scanners. His species, the Vorthok, had been conquering worlds for centuries. They had learned that the best way to break a species was to take their young ones first. "Report," Thek commanded. His voice was harsh and grating. "The settlement has approximately 2,000 humans," reported his second-in-command. "Our scans show that about 500 are juveniles." "Perfect," Thek said, his mouth curved in what might have been a smile, but with too many sharp teeth. "Humans are known to be emotional about their offspring. Take a small group of the young ones, and the adults will surrender immediately." The Vorthok had done this many times before. Other species would give up entire planets to save their children. It was efficient. It was effective. It saved the Vorthok from having to fight real battles. "Which ones should we target?" asked the tactical officer. "The older juveniles," Dex decided. "They will be more valuable for negotiations. But make sure to include some of the smaller ones too. Humans are particularly weak when it comes to protecting their smallest members." The alien ship moved silently through the planet's atmosphere. Its advanced stealth technology made it invisible to the colony's simple detection systems. The Vorthok had done this operation so many times that it felt routine. Down in the colony, Daeho suddenly stopped typing. His computer screens were showing strange readings. The communication signals were being disrupted by something, but he could not figure out what. "That's weird," he muttered to himself. At the same time, Soyang stopped running. She felt like someone was watching her, but when she looked around, she saw nothing unusual. Her instincts were telling her something was wrong, but she could not put her finger on what. The Vorthok strike team prepared for deployment. They had studied human children and believed them to be weak and helpless. Their intelligence reports showed that human juveniles were kept safe and protected by adults, never allowed to face danger or learn to fight. "Remember," Commander Thek told his soldiers, "these are not warriors. They are soft, weak creatures who have never faced real hardship." This should be simple. The strike team descended from their ship using personal cloaking devices. They moved through the colony like ghosts, invisible to human eyes. Their plan was to grab the children quickly and quietly, then return to their ship before anyone knew what had happened. They started with the older children first. Jinho was walking to school when he suddenly felt something grab him from behind. Before he could shout, a device was pressed against his neck, and he fell unconscious. One by one, the aliens captured their targets. Mireille was taken from the school courtyard. Daeho was pulled from his computer. Soyang was grabbed during her morning run. Kungmin vanished from the dining hall. The younger children were collected just as easily. The aliens worked with practiced efficiency. Within 20 minutes, they had captured 12 human children. They carried the unconscious forms back to their ship and placed them in holding cells designed for young prisoners. Too easy, laughed one of the alien soldiers. I almost feel sorry for these humans. Their young ones did not even try to fight back. Human juveniles are pathetic, agreed another. No wonder this species is considered weak by the galactic community. Commander Thex was pleased with the operation's success. Prepare the negotiation broadcast. He ordered, by tomorrow, this planet will surrender, and we will add another world to the Vorthok Empire. But as the alien ship left the planet's atmosphere, something strange happened. The captured children began to wake up much sooner than expected. Their bodies processed the alien sedative faster than the Vorthok had calculated. In the holding cells, 12 pairs of human eyes opened, and instead of crying or panicking as the aliens expected, the children began to observe. They began to think. They began to plan. The Vorthok had made their first mistake. They had assumed that human children were like the young of other species. They had conquered, but humans were different. Human children were taught to be curious, to be resourceful, to never give up. The aliens thought they had captured helpless victims. They had no idea that they had just made the worst mistake of their lives. The first thing Jinho noticed when he woke up was the strange smell. It was sharp and metallic, nothing like the clean air of New Sol Colony. His head felt heavy and his mouth was dry. He tried to move but found himself lying on a hard surface. That felt cold against his skin. Slowly, his vision cleared. He was in a small room with walls that seemed to glow with a dim purple light. The ceiling was low and curved, made of some material he had never seen before. There was no window, no door that he could see. Came a whisper from somewhere nearby. He turned his head and saw Mireille in a similar room next to his. There was a transparent barrier between them, but he could see and hear her clearly. Are you okay? He asked, his voice hoarse. I think so. Where are we? Before Jinho could answer, more voices joined their conversation. All around them, the other children were waking up. Each was in their own small cell, separated by the same clear barriers. Daeho was the first to stand up and examine his surroundings. Even though his head was still spinning from whatever drug the aliens had used, his mind was working. He pressed his hands against the walls and felt them carefully. The material is not metal, he said to the others. It feels like some kind of ceramic or crystal. Very smooth, very strong. Soyoung tested the barriers by pushing against them with her shoulder. They did not move at all. She tried different angles, using her full strength, but the walls held firm. These barriers are solid, she reported, but I can feel a slight vibration through the floor. We are moving. We must be on a ship. Kyungmin had been listening to everything. While studying the layout of their prison, everyone count off, he said. Let me know you are okay. One by one, all 12 children responded. They were scared, but none of them were panicking. This surprised the Vorthok guards who were watching through hidden cameras. The human juveniles are not crying, observed one guard to another. Most species we capture spend hours screaming and begging. Perhaps they are too shocked, replied his partner. Give them time, they will break soon enough. But the children were not breaking, they were thinking. Hunwoo had found a small vent near the ceiling of his cell. He could not reach it, but he could hear air flowing through it. There is air circulation, he reported to the others. The air smells different from home, but it is breathable. Yuna was examining the floor of her cell, inch by inch. The floor has tiny holes in it, she discovered, like a pattern, maybe for drainage or cleaning. Little Minho had been studying the glowing walls. The light changes, he announced. It gets a little brighter and darker in cycles. Maybe it follows their day and night schedule. Even 9-year-old Wanbin was contributing. I counted my steps when they carried me, he said. We walked for about 2 minutes before they put us in here, so we are not far from where they brought us onto the ship. The children began to piece together information about their situation. They were on an alien ship, in what appeared to be a detention area designed for prisoners. The cells were strong, but not uncomfortable. They had air, light, and space to move around. Why do you think they took us? Asked Yoonji. Probably to use us against our parents, Jinho said. They think if they have us, the colony will surrender. That means they want us alive and unhurt, reasoned Q, and they need us healthy to be valuable. This realization made everyone feel a little better. If the aliens needed them alive, they had time to figure out what to do next. Daeho had been studying the ceiling of his cell. I think there are sensors up there, he said. Small devices that are probably watching and listening to us, so they can hear everything we say, asked Ga probably. But that might be useful to know. The children began to understand that they needed to be careful about what they said out loud, but they also realized they could use this to their advantage. Over the next few hours, they developed a simple communication system. They used hand signals and gestures that they had learned in their colony's emergency training. Their parents had taught all the children basic sign language in case they ever needed to communicate silently. The Vorthok guards watched their prisoners with growing confusion. The human children were not acting like other young prisoners. had captured, they were not crying or begging to go home. Instead, they seemed to be studying their environment and working together. Maybe human juveniles are naturally more mature, suggested one guard. Or maybe they do not understand their situation yet, replied another. But the children understood perfectly. They were prisoners on an alien ship, taken from their home to be used as bargaining tools. The question was what they were going to do about it. Taeyeon had been testing different parts of his cell. He found that while the walls and barriers were incredibly strong, the junction where the wall met the floor had a tiny gap. It was too small to escape through, but big enough to pass small objects. We might be able to pass things between cells, he whispered to the others, using sign language. This opened up new possibilities. If they could share materials and tools, they might be able to work together even while separated. Soyoung had been doing exercises in her cell, partly to stay in shape and partly to test how much noise she could make without attracting attention. She found that the aliens only responded if she made very loud sounds. They are not watching us constantly, she signed to the others. They only check when we make noise. The children began to form a plan. It would take time and careful coordination, but they were starting to see possibilities their captors had not considered. As the ship continued through space, the Vorthok crew celebrated their successful mission. They had captured valuable hostages, without any trouble. Soon they would contact the human colony and demand surrender in exchange for the children's safe return. Commander Thex was particularly pleased. The human juveniles are even more pathetic than our intelligence reports suggested, he told his officers. They have not even attempted to escape or fight back. This will be the easiest conquest in Vorthok history. But down in the detention area, 12 human children were quietly proving that the commander's confidence was about to become his biggest mistake. They had already learned more about their prison in a few hours than the Vorthok expected them to discover in days. They were working together, sharing information, and beginning to understand their captors' weaknesses. The aliens thought they had captured helpless children. They had no idea they had brought aboard a group of young humans who had been raised to never give up, never stop learning, and never stop fighting for their freedom. Back on New Seoul Colony, the morning had turned into a nightmare. Parents came home from work to find their children missing. Teachers reported empty classrooms. The colony's security team searched every building, every tunnel, every corner of the settlement. Jinho and Mireille's parents, Dr. Kim Soo-yoon and engineer Kim Ju-won, stood in their empty apartment with trembling hands. Mireille's breakfast bowl was still on the table, half finished. Jinho's school bag was by the door where he had left it. Where are they? Ji-won whispered. Where are our children? Similar scenes were playing out in 11 other homes across the colony. Daeho's father found his son's computer still running, screens filled with strange signal readings. Soyoung, mother discovered her daughter's running shoes by the track, as if she had simply vanished mid-stride. Colony administrator Park Min-jae called an emergency meeting. Every adult in the settlement crowded into the main hall. Fear and anger filled the room like a thick cloud. We have searched everywhere, Park announced. 12 of our children are missing. There are no signs of struggle, no footprints, nothing. It is as if they simply disappeared. Dr. Soo-yoon stood up. She was a medical officer, trained to stay calm in emergencies, but her voice shook. My daughter Mireille heard strange sounds last night, like thunder with no clouds. Maybe it was not mining equipment. Engineer Gi-won nodded. I was reviewing the power grid data this morning. There were unusual energy readings around the time the children disappeared. Something was using advanced technology near our settlement. The pieces began to come together. The colonists realized they were not dealing with a simple disappearance. Someone or something had taken their children using technology far beyond what humans possessed. Aliens, whispered someone in the crowd. The word spread through the hall like fire. Fear turned to anger. Grief turned to rage. These were not just any children who had been taken. These were their children, their families, their future. Park Min-jae activated the colony's long-range communication system. I am sending a message to Earth Defense Command. We need help. But as the adults worked to contact Earth, they had no idea that high above their planet, the alien ship was preparing to contact them first. Commander Thex stood on his ship's bridge, watching the human colony through his scanners. He could see the tiny figures running around like insects, searching for their missing young. It was a sight he had seen many times before with other species. Prepare the communication array, he ordered. It is time to make our demands. The transmission reached the colony's main communication center within minutes. Administrator Park received the signal and called everyone back to the main hall. The entire colony gathered to hear what their children's captors had to say. The main screen flickered to life, showing the terrifying face of Commander Thex. His reptilian features and sharp teeth made several colonists gasp in fear. Humans of New Seoul Colony, Thex began, his voice cold and mechanical through the translator. I am Commander Thex of the Vorthok Empire. We have taken 12 of your juveniles. The hall erupted in angry shouts, but Park raised his hand for silence. Your offspring are alive and unharmed, Thex continued. They will remain so if you follow our instructions exactly. You will surrender your colony to the Vorthok Empire. You will submit to our rule. Do this, and your young ones will be returned. Never, shouted Engineer G1, jumping to his feet. You have 24 of your planet's hours to decide, Vex said, ignoring the outburst. Refuse, and your juveniles will face the consequences. We will contact you again tomorrow for your answer. The transmission ended, leaving the hall in stunned silence. But instead of the fear and desperation that Vex expected, something else was happening in the colony. The adults were not breaking down. They were standing up straighter. Their eyes were not filled with defeat. They were filled with fire. Dr. Suyun was the first to speak. They think we will give up our home to save our children. They do not understand us at all. They think our children are weak, added Jiwan. They have never met human children before. A bitter smile crossed Park Minja's face. They took our kids thinking it would make us surrender. They just made the biggest mistake of their lives. The colony administrator activated the emergency protocols. Within hours, every adult in the settlement was armed and ready for war. They sent urgent messages to Earth, to other colonies, to anyone who would listen. The Vorthok Empire has attacked humanity. The message read, they have taken our children. This is a declaration of war. Meanwhile, aboard the alien ship, the 12 captured children had been working throughout the day. They had mapped their prison, identified weak points, and developed a communication system that their captors could not detect. Daeho had been studying the electronic systems in his cell. Using techniques he had learned from taking apart radios and computers, he found patterns in the ship's power grid. The power cycles every 6 hours. He signed to the others. During the cycle change, there is a brief power fluctuation. Maybe, we can use that. Soyoung had been testing her physical limits. The gravity here is lighter than home, she reported. I can jump higher and move faster than usual. That might be useful. Taeyeon had used the tiny gap between his wall and floor to pass small objects between cells. Thread from their clothing, small metal pieces from their shoes, anything that might be useful. We are not just prisoners, Kyungmin signed to the group. We are reconnaissance agents. We are learning everything about this ship and these aliens. Hyenwoo had been listening to sounds throughout the ship. I can hear their footsteps. They walk differently than humans, heavier, slower, and they follow the same patrol patterns every time. Even little Wanbin had important information. I counted the guards. Only 6 of them patrol this area, and they change shifts every 4 hours. The children were building a complete picture of their captors and their prison. They knew when the guards would come, how the ship's systems worked, and where the weak points might be. But most importantly, they were learning that the Vorthok had made a critical error. The aliens expected human children to be helpless victims. Instead, they had captured a team of young investigators who were gathering intelligence about their enemy. As night fell on New Sol Colony, the human adults prepared for war. As the ship's artificial day cycle dimmed, the human children prepared for something their captors never saw coming. The Vorthok thought they had won an easy victory. They had no idea that both the human adults and human children were about to show them what happened when you threatened a human family. The real battle was just beginning. The next morning on the alien ship came with a surprise that shocked the Vorthok guards. When they checked their monitors, they found that the human children were not in their cells. Well, they were in their cells, but not where they were supposed to be. Somehow, during the night, the children had managed to move around within their prison area. Daeho was now in Soyoung's cell. Mai-Ray had switched places with Yuna. Several others had also moved to different locations. How is this possible? Demanded the guard captain. The barriers were sealed. The locks were secure. Check the recordings, ordered his lieutenant, but when they reviewed the security footage, they found something impossible. The recordings showed the children sleeping peacefully in their original cells all night. Yet here they were, clearly in different places. What the Vorthok did not know was that Daeho had figured out how to create a feedback loop in their surveillance system. Using the metal threads the children had collected, he had created a simple device that could interfere with the cameras for short periods. The recordings lie, the guard captain reported to Commander Dex. The human juveniles have somehow moved between their cells. Dex was not worried, so they have learned a simple trick. It does not matter, they are still trapped. Begin the second transmission to their colony. But down in the prison area, much more than simple tricks were happening. The children had spent the night working together in ways their captors never imagined possible. Taeyeon had used his knowledge of survival techniques to create tools from the materials they had gathered. Minho had studied the cell's locking mechanisms and found their weak points. Most importantly, they had discovered that the transparent barriers between cells were not as solid as they appeared. Using a technique Yunji had learned from her medical training, they found that the barriers had microscopic stress points. By applying pressure in exactly the right places, they could create tiny openings. The barriers are like glass, explained to the others. If you know where to press, you can make them crack in specific ways. It took hours of careful work, but they had managed to create small passages between several cells, not big enough for a person to pass through, but large enough to share tools and materials. Kyungmin had used this breakthrough to reorganize their group. Now, children with specific skills were paired together in ways that made them more effective. Daeho and Minho worked together on understanding the ship's electronic systems. Soyoung and Taeyeon focused on physical challenges and escape routes. Jinho and Kungmin planned overall strategy. The younger children gathered information and created tools. "We are not prisoners anymore," Jinho told the group. "We are a resistance cell operating behind enemy lines." The children began to put their plan into action. They had learned the guard rotation schedules, the power system cycles, and the layout of their prison area. Now it was time to use that knowledge. When the guards came for their routine inspection, they found the children exactly where they expected them to be, but what they did not see were the tiny tools hidden in clothing, the modified cell barriers, and the communication network the children had established. The human juveniles appear to have accepted their situation, reported the guard. "Captain, they are behaving normally." This was exactly what the children wanted their captors to think. Over the following hours, the children continued their work. Hyun-woo used his scouting skills to map the areas outside their prison by listening to sounds and vibrations. Jie observed the guards' behavior patterns and identified their individual weaknesses. Yuna had been working on something particularly clever. She had realized that the ship's communication system used some of the same principles as the radios back on the colony. Using components they had gathered, she was trying to build a device that could intercept the aliens' internal communications. If we can hear what they are saying to each other, she reasoned, we will know what they are planning. Meanwhile, Wonbin had been studying the ship's artificial gravity system. Despite being only 9 years old, he had noticed that the gravity was not the same everywhere in their prison area. "The gravity is weaker near the walls," he observed, "and it changes slightly during the power cycles. Maybe we can use that." The children were turning their prison into a workshop, their captivity into an intelligence operation, and their helplessness into a strategic advantage. But their biggest breakthrough came when Daeho finally managed to access one of the ship's secondary computer systems. Using a combination of the tools they had created and techniques he had learned from hacking Earth computers, he found a way into the alien network. "I am in," he whispered to the others. "I can see some of their systems. Their security is not as good as they think." What Daeho discovered shocked all of them. The Vorthok had detailed files on dozens of other species they had conquered using the same tactic. In every case, the adult population had surrendered immediately when their children were taken. "They have done this before," Daeho reported. "Many times they always win because other species give up to save their young. But we are not other species," said Mireille firmly. "We are human." The children realized that they were not just fighting for their own freedom. They were fighting to prove that humanity was different from every other species the Vorthok had faced. As the day continued, their resistance efforts grew bolder. They began testing the limits of what they could do without alerting their guards. They practiced moving silently, communicating without sound, and working together with perfect coordination. Su-young discovered that the lighter gravity allowed her to perform physical feats that would be impossible on Earth. She could leap between cell barriers, hang from the ceiling for extended periods, and move with incredible speed and silence. Taeyeon found ways to use the ship's own systems against it. By understanding how the environmental controls worked, he could create small changes in temperature and airflow that the aliens would not notice but that could be used to send signals. By evening, the children had transformed from prisoners into something the Vorthok had never encountered before, human children who refused to be victims. "Tomorrow we move to the next phase," Kyungmin told the group. "We have learned everything we can about this prison. Now we start taking control." The Vorthok guards settled in for another quiet night, confident that their prisoners were secure. They had no idea that 12 human children were about to begin an operation that would change everything, that the resistance was ready to become a revolution. The third day aboard the Vorthok ship began with an alarm that had never sounded before in the detention. Area guard Captain Vex rushed to the prison section to find his men standing outside the cell block, looking confused and frightened. "Report," he demanded. "Sir, we cannot enter the detention area," stammered one guard. "The doors will not open." "What do you mean they will not open?" "The security system shows that the doors are locked from the inside, but that is impossible. The prisoners do not have access to the controls." Vex pushed past his men and tried the door himself. It was indeed locked, and the control panel showed a security lockdown in progress. According to the system, the detention area was sealed due to a containment breach. "There is no containment breach," Vex growled. "The human juveniles are playing games." But when he tried to override the system, he found that his command codes were not working. Somehow, someone had changed the security protocols. Inside the detention area, the 12 human children were no longer in their cells. During the night, they had implemented the plan they had been preparing for days. Using the tools they had created and the knowledge they had gained, They had managed to escape their individual cells and take control of the entire prison section. Daeho had been the key to their success. His access to the ship's computer systems had grown stronger each day. Now he could control doors, lights, air, circulation, and even some of the security protocols. All detention area systems are under our control, he reported to the others. The guards cannot get in, and we can monitor everything they do. The children had not just escaped their cells, they had turned their prison into their fortress. Soyoung had used her enhanced abilities in the lighter gravity to reach areas of the ship that the aliens never expected anyone to access. She had found ventilation shafts, maintenance tunnels, and service corridors that connected to other parts of the ship. We can move anywhere in this section without being seen, she told the group, and I found where they keep their equipment. Taeyeon had been studying the alien technology they had captured. The Vorthok used energy weapons that were more advanced than human firearms, but they operated on principles he could understand. Their weapons have safety locks, he explained. But the locks are designed for Vorthok biology. Human hands are smaller and more flexible. We can use their own weapons against them. The children had also discovered something important about their captors' psychology. The Vorthok were not used to resistance from their prisoners. They expected captured species to remain passive and fearful. They do not know how to handle enemies who fight back, observed Kyungmin. Their whole strategy depends on their victims. Being helpless, Juye had been watching the guards through the security cameras that Daeho had accessed. They are confused and scared, she reported. They keep talking to each other in worried voices. This was exactly what the children had hoped for. By taking control of their situation, they had changed the entire dynamic. The hunters were becoming the hunted. Commander Thex arrived at the detention area within the hour, bringing additional guards and technical specialists. He was furious at the situation but confident it could be resolved quickly. Override the security system, he ordered his technicians. We are trying, sir, replied the lead technician, but the lockdown protocols are using codes we do not recognize. Someone has modified our own system against us. That is impossible. The human juveniles do not have the knowledge or ability to hack Vorthok technology. But even as X spoke, the lights in the corridor began to flicker in a pattern. The children were sending a message using the ship's own systems. Yuna had learned enough about Vorthok communication protocols to create a simple translation program. The message was clear. We are not afraid of you. Dex felt something he had never experienced in decades of conquest, uncertainty. His prisoners were not behaving like prisoners. They were acting like enemy combatants. Cut power to the entire detention section, he ordered. But when the technicians tried to shut down power, they found that the children had rerouted the ship's energy systems. The detention area was now drawing power from multiple sources, including the ship's main life support systems. If we cut power to the prison, we will lose life support for half the ship, reported the chief engineer. Inside their controlled territory, the children were implementing the next phase of their plan. They had not just taken defensive positions, they were going on the offensive. Minho had figured out how to access the ship's internal communication system. Now they could hear everything the Vorthok were saying to each other. They are calling for reinforcements, he reported, and they are very worried about what to tell their commanders. Hyunwoo had found the ship's cargo bay through the ventilation system. They have supplies and equipment that we can use, he told the others, including communication devices that might reach our colony. The children were no longer just trying to escape. They were trying to fight back and contact home. Yangji had been studying the Vorthok guards through the security cameras. They move differently when they are scared, she observed. Their formation gets tighter, their reaction time gets slower. Fear makes them predictable. Little Wanbin had made perhaps the most important discovery of all. While exploring the areas they now controlled, he had found detailed plans of the ship's layout. I know where the important parts of the ship are, he announced. The engine room, the bridge, the communication center. If we can reach those areas, we can take control of the whole ship. The idea was ambitious beyond anything they had considered before, but as they looked at their situation, the children realized they had already achieved the impossible. They had turned from prisoners into resistance fighters. Why not take the next step? We have a choice, Jinho told the group. We can try to escape and hope someone rescues us. Or we can take control of this ship and rescue ourselves. The vote was unanimous. As night fell on their third day of captivity, the 12 human children began planning the most audacious operation in the history of space warfare, the capture of an alien battleship by a group of kids who were supposed to be helpless prisoners. Commander Thex stood outside the detention area, staring at the locked doors that his own technology could not open. For the first time in his military career, he was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. The human children were not like other species. They were something entirely new and dangerous, and they were just getting started. On the fourth day, Commander Thex received an emergency communication that would change everything. The message came from the Vorthok Intelligence Command, and what it contained made his blood run cold. Commander, came the voice of his superior. Hi, Admiral Krex. We have been monitoring human military communications since your capture operation. What you are about to hear will explain why your mission has gone wrong. The transmission included intercepted messages from Earth's defense fleet. As Vex listened, he felt his confidence crumble. All available ships proceed to Kepler-4 for to be at maximum speed. The Vorthok Empire has committed an act of war against humanity. They have taken our children. This is not a rescue mission. This is a full military response. But that was not the worst part. The intelligence report included detailed analysis of human military capabilities, and the numbers were terrifying. The humans have over 300 warships within striking distance of your position. Admiral Krex continued. Their technology is more advanced than our initial reports suggested. But most concerning of all, their entire species appears to be mobilizing for war over the capture of 12 juveniles. Vex stared at the data in disbelief. 12 children, he whispered. We took 12 children, and they are sending their entire fleet. The intelligence report continued with even more disturbing information. Other human colonies were joining the mobilization. Space stations were being converted to military bases. The entire human civilian population was supporting the war effort. The humans are not behaving like any species we have encountered, Admiral Krex explained. They treat an attack on their young as an attack on their entire civilization. They do not separate their civilians from their military. Every human adult appears to be willing to fight. Down in the detention area, the children had been monitoring Vorthok communications through the systems they had captured. They heard everything. Our people are coming, Deho told the others, his voice filled with pride and excitement. Not just coming, corrected Yuna, who had been translating more of the alien messages. They are bringing everything they have. The entire human fleet. The children felt a surge of hope, but they also understood something important. Their families and friends were risking everything to save them. They could not just wait to be rescued. They had to continue fighting. We need to help them, declared Kingman. If we can take control of this ship, we can provide intelligence about Vorthok technology and tactics. The children had been preparing for this moment. Over the past day, they had expanded their control beyond the detention area, using ventilation shafts and maintenance tunnels. They had reached other parts of the ship. So Young had established positions in 3 different sections. Hyunwoo had mapped the entire ship's layout. Taeyeon had gathered intelligence on Vorthok weapons and equipment. Most importantly, Daeho had gained access to the ship's central computer systems. I can see everything now, he reported. Navigation, communications, weapons, life support. If we coordinate this right, we can take control of the whole ship. But their most significant breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Little Wanbin had been studying the psychological profiles of their captors, and he had made a crucial discovery. The Vorthok are not used to fighting equals, he explained to the others. They only know how to conquer weaker species. They have never faced an enemy that fights back effectively. This insight changed everything. The children realized they were not just fighting for their freedom. They were fighting against an enemy that had never learned how to handle real opposition. Commander, Dex was discovering this truth the hard way. His crew was falling apart under the psychological pressure of their situation. Guards were reporting sick rather than face patrol duty near the detention area. Officers were questioning orders they had never doubted before. The human juveniles are affecting crew morale, reported his second-in-command. The men are saying that if human children can outsmart us, maybe humans are not the weak species we believed them to be. Vex knew he had to act decisively. He ordered a full assault on the detention area, using heavy weapons and overwhelming force. But when his troops tried to breach the sealed doors, they found that the children had prepared for this too. The moment the doors were forced open, the ship's fire suppression system activated. Filling the corridors with harmless but blinding foam, emergency alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The lights went out, leaving the Vorthok troops stumbling in darkness, while the children, who had night vision equipment they had improvised from ship components, could see perfectly. Fall back, ordered the assault team leader. We cannot see anything. It was at this moment that Commander Vex finally understood the full scope of his mistake. He was not dealing with primitive prisoners. He was facing human beings who had turned his own ship into a weapon against him. The children had not just escaped their cells or taken control of a few ship systems. They had systematically analyzed every aspect of their captors' technology and psychology, then used that knowledge to transform from victims into predators. Sir, came a terrified voice over the ship's communication system. The human juveniles are broadcasting on our emergency frequencies. Vex rushed to the bridge to hear what they were saying. The voice that came through the speakers was calm and confident. It was Ginho speaking for all of them. Commander Vex, this is the human resistance aboard your ship. We know that our fleet is coming. We know that you are scared. We are prepared to offer you terms for your surrender. The bridge fell silent. No one could believe what they were hearing. The prisoners were offering terms to their captors. You have made a mistake, Jinho continued. You thought human children were weak. You thought taking us would make our people surrender. Instead, you have started a war with a species that will never stop fighting to protect their families. Commander, Dex felt something break inside him. His entire worldview, his understanding of conquest and power, had been shattered by 12 human children. But we are not cruel like you. The broadcast continued. Surrender now, and we will make sure you are treated fairly when our fleet arrives. Continue to fight, and face the consequences when 300 human warships reach this position. The communication ended, leaving the Vorthok bridge crew staring at each other in stunned silence. For the first time in Vorthok history, their prisoners were dictating terms to them. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Commander Dex was beginning to realize that he might actually consider accepting those terms. The fifth day brought the moment everyone had been waiting for. Long-range sensors detected the approaching human fleet, and the sight was unlike anything the Vorthok had ever seen. 312 human warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation around the alien vessel. But these were not just military ships. The humans had brought colony ships, medical vessels, supply craft, and even civilian transports that had been hastily armed for combat. By the void, whispered the Vorthok sensor officer. Their entire civilization has come to war. Commander Dex stood on his bridge, watching the human fleet surround his single ship. The tactical display showed that he was outnumbered by more than 300 to 1. But numbers were not what terrified him most. What terrified him was the realization that humanity had mobilized this massive force to save 12 children. The lead human ship, the battlecruiser New Earth, opened communications. The face that appeared on the screen was stern and unforgiving. It was Admiral Sarah Chen, commander of the human fleet, Vorthok vessel. This is Admiral Chen of the Human Defense Force. You will surrender immediately and return our children, or we will take them by force. Dex found his voice. Admiral, surely we can negotiate. You have brought an impressive fleet, but there will be no negotiation, Chen interrupted. You have committed an act of war against humanity by taking our children. Your only choice is surrender or destruction. Before Dex could respond, another voice cut into the communication. It was coming from inside his own ship. Admiral Chen, this is Jin Ho Kim. We are the captured children, and we are currently in control of significant portions of this alien ship. The human admiral's expression changed from anger to amazement. Say again, son, we have taken control of the ship's communications, navigation, and several other systems. We are prepared to assist in any rescue operation. On the bridge of the New Earth, Admiral Chen turned to her tactical officer. Did that child just say they are in control of the enemy ship? Yes, ma'am. Our sensors confirm that the alien vessel's systems are being operated by sources inside the ship, not from the bridge. What followed was the most unusual military briefing in human history. The 12 children provided detailed intelligence about Vorthok technology, ship layout, crew positions, and tactical capabilities. They had spent 5 days learning everything about their captors and were now sharing that knowledge with the rescue fleet. Deho had mapped the ship's computer systems. Soyang reported on the physical layout and guard positions. Taeyang provided analysis of Vorthok weapons and armor. Each child contributed vital intelligence that would have taken military specialists weeks to gather. These kids have done more intelligence work in 5 days than our best agents could do in months, Admiral Chen told her staff. But the children were not finished. They had one more surprise for their captors. Admiral, came Kung Min's voice over the communication channel. We have a proposal. Instead of a costly battle, we can deliver the ship to you intact. We just need you to be ready to receive it. Before anyone could ask what he meant, the Vorthok ship began to move. But it was not trying to escape. Instead, it was maneuvering toward the human fleet's flagship. On the alien bridge, Commander Dex watched in horror as his own ship's controls stopped responding to his commands. What is happening? He demanded. The human juveniles have taken control of navigation, reported his helmsman. I cannot override their commands. The children had spent their time in captivity, learning not just how to escape, but how to capture their captors. They were flying the Vorthok ship directly into the human fleet's custody. All Vorthok crew members, report to the main cargo bay immediately, came Ginho's voice over the ship's communication system. Anyone who does not comply will be considered hostile. The alien crew found themselves following orders given by their former prisoners. The psychological impact was devastating. They had been completely outmaneuvered by children they had considered helpless. As the ship docked with the human flagship, the children opened the airlocks themselves. They had not just escaped their captivity, they had delivered their captors. As prisoners, Admiral Chen was the first human to board the alien vessel. What she found amazed her. The 12 children were standing in formation, presenting themselves like a military unit returning from a successful mission. Admiral Chen Ginho said, stepping forward. We are happy to report that our mission was successful. We have gathered extensive intelligence on Vorthok capabilities and captured their ship intact. Your mission? Chen asked, confused. Yes, ma'am. When we were captured, we decided that we were not just prisoners. We were reconnaissance agents operating behind enemy lines. Our mission was to learn everything we could about the enemy and find a way to help our people. Admiral Chen looked at the 12 young faces in front of her. These children had been taken from their homes, imprisoned on an alien ship, and threatened with death. Instead of breaking down, they had turned their captivity into a military operation. How old are you? She asked Gnu. 16, ma'am. And you organized this entire operation? We all did, ma'am. Humans worked together. The boarding parties found the Vorthok crew cowering in the cargo bay, completely demoralized. They surrendered without resistance. Some were actually relieved to be captured by human adults rather than face the children again. Commander Vex was brought before Admiral Chen in restraints. His once proud bearing was gone, replaced by the defeated posture of someone whose entire worldview had been destroyed. Do you understand what you have done? Chen asked him. I took 12 human juveniles. Vex replied weakly. No, Chen corrected. You attacked the children of humanity. You made every human adult in the galaxy your personal enemy. You turned every human child into a potential resistance fighter. You have shown the entire galactic community that humanity cannot be conquered through conventional means. The aftermath of the incident spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. The story of 12 human children who captured an alien warship became legend among both human and alien populations. Other species that had been conquered by the Vorthok began to reconsider their situations. If human children could defeat the mighty Vorthok Empire, what could their own people accomplish? The Vorthok Empire itself went into decline. Their reputation for invincibility was shattered. Their strategy of conquering through fear was useless. Against species that had learned about human resistance, back on New Sol Colony, the 12 children returned to heroes' welcomes. But they did not see themselves as heroes. They saw themselves as ordinary human children who had done what any human would do when threatened. We just did not give up, Myray explained to the reporters who interviewed them. That is what humans do. We never give up? The incident became a turning point in galactic history. It marked the moment when humanity was recognized not as another species to be conquered, but as a force that would defend itself at any cost. And it all started because a group of alien conquerors made the mistake of thinking that human children would be easy victims. They learned too late that there is no such thing as a helpless human child. There are only young humans who have not yet had a chance to show what they can do. The Vorthok Empire had learned the price of underestimating humanity. It was a lesson that would echo throughout the galaxy for generations to come. The children of Earth were not just the future of humanity. They were proof that humanity's future was unstoppable.